I'm Safi Russell from SDR Consulting Inc., and we're here today on Business Basics Friday. The goal of this session is to provide some value to small business owners in the space of tax, accounting, and general business, and then have an open Q&A at the end.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Hope all is well with you. It's Safi Russell here. If you're joining us live, go ahead and share in the chat or in the Clubhouse chat here as well, where you're joining from. So here in the comments on Facebook or in the Clubhouse chat, share where you're joining us from. Joining you from New York today, and it is rainy and 46 degrees, December 16th, 2022. As we close out this year. Happy holiday season to everyone. So welcome if you're here for the first time. Welcome to Business Basics Friday. I'm Safiatou Russell, CEO and founder of SDR Consulting, Inc. And Business Basics Friday is a weekly session catered to providing valuable information to business owners. We have a variety of guest speakers that come in and share information and educate you in the many areas of your business that you may need to manage. Just as a disclosure, this is just information, education, no client relationship or specific advice being given for your situation. We're not liable for any use of the information provided today. As far as my background, I've been in the industry 20 years, and I'm a CPA and enrolled agent, and also have a master's in taxation. SDR Consulting Inc. is a virtual firm based here in New York, but we do service clients all over. And I mostly work with mental health professionals, helping them reduce their concerns regarding tax and accounting so you can focus on your own well-being and well-being of your clients and grow your practice. So as you have questions today, go ahead and drop them in the comments or in the Clubhouse chat. We will go over them at the end. And so I want to welcome our guest speaker here today, Chrystal Abbott, and she will be going over the topic of employee handbooks, do's and don'ts. So welcome again, Chrystal. Thanks for your time today, and take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would actually normally say good morning because I'm in California. My name is Chrystal Abbott. I'm an HR professional that I've been in the business now for almost 21 years at this point. I am excited to be here, and I appreciate Safi for inviting me. So the year end brings a lot of things that needs to be reviewed for business owners. And one of the things that, we strongly encourage is the employee handbook. And in the employee handbook are all the things that you definitely want to make sure that you review as the employer. So the employee handbook is what is the basis for the company, right? So let's start with it. So let's start here. The employee handbook is not required. It is not necessary. It is not a legal document that is required for the company. It is simply a best practice, okay? And as business owners, a lot of times we do things for, the betterment of the company. When you have employees, I strongly recommend and suggest you have some guidelines, because those guidelines help to set the expectations for not only the employee, but what the employee can expect from the organization. It also helps you to make sure that you stay in compliance. I live in California, and if you are, a business owner in California, or especially New York, with employees, our states have the most complex and the most ever-changing, laws and regulations that employees need to, or employers need to abide by for the sake of the employees. We always want to stay compliant. And then last but certainly not least, the employee handbook gives you an opportunity to showcase your organization. This is, has been donned as the Great Resignation. The employee handbook can be a starting point to retain employees, attract employees, ensure that you are held in a good light in regards to how your organization is viewed. Okay. So let's get down to some of the do's. Probably the biggest thing you want to start with is making sure it's updated timely. I always encourage business owners to look at and review their handbook at least once a year. The reason for that is because, again, rules change, compliance change, business needs change. Whether you are growing and you have to do things differently, or you are scaling back and you have to do things differently. One of the biggest things COVID has taught us is that we have to be pivotable. So you have to be able to change with the times. Looking at the employee handbook is exactly where that would start. We have virtual employees, and we have employees that are able to start with the handbook itself. The next thing you want to do is make sure you have your workplace conduct. So those would be the basic rules. How often the kitchen may get clean or the break room may get clean. Also would be in there is, if you have smokers, where are they allowed to take their smoke breaks outside, and what areas. How often, depending on your industry, will you do locker checks or office checks? I know some clients that they're in manufacturing and they want to do, you know, random office checks. Do you have a drug testing policy? That would be often there. How often do you conduct those drug testing capabilities and things like that? We want to make the employees aware of the things that will happen. One of the other things you definitely want to put in there are the benefits. Again, like I said once before, we want to highlight the company. You want to highlight, you know, what is good for them as far as what they're going to get as benefits, how much paid vacation or PTO, how much sick time, what benefits apply to them, performance reviews, how often are they done? Not only that, but it also provides you to highlight any retirement benefits or pensions or anything of that sort that the employees would want to know or need to know. And we always want to be able to highlight that stuff in the employee handbook. A couple of things that you don't want to put in the employee handbook. So job descriptions. Job descriptions are for specific individuals. I will say this, you may have an employee that have the same job title, but do two totally different things. And you want to make sure that you are able to differentiate with the employees and differentiate with those that have different job duties on a daily basis. That is not something you want to put in the employee handbook. The other thing you want to make sure that you realize with the employee handbook is that you don't want to try to capture every single rule and every single policy the company wants to abide by, meaning parking. I'll just take something as simple as parking. If you are in a complex by yourself, employees are able to park where they want to park, right? If you have clients that come in, it may be important to highlight in the handbook, the first row of parking is for customers. But if it doesn't matter and no one has, you know, assigned parking, then it's not something that necessarily needs to be in the handbook. You'll never be able to capture every rule and every regulation as it pertains to the employee handbook. So keep that in mind. Standard operating procedures, how you conduct your business is not something that needs to go in the employee handbook. Those are more training materials that need to be updated with teams, you know, different departments, things like that. It's not necessarily for the overall organization. And then last and probably the most important, you never ever want to put anything in the employee handbook that takes away from the National Labor Relations Act, so the NLRA. So basically, you can't tell employees that they cannot discuss wages. That will be against the law, according to the NLRA. You can't tell them they can't discuss the working environment within the company. What we can do in employee handbook to say, hey, if you have a grievance, if you have, an issue, bring it to management, bring it to department heads, bring it to HR. In addition to that, you can have an open door policy, and that's probably one of the other dues you definitely want to put in there, that the company has an open door policy, meaning that they can come to management, they can come to HR without any retaliation to voice their concerns about the organization. But you absolutely can't tell them that they cannot do those things. And that's very important. Some other dues in regards to the employee handbook, when I said the open door policy, you want to definitely tell them how that open door policy works. So, will it be all written? Will you need, time to investigate and tell others about, to pull others in to be able to discuss whatever the issues are? You do want to tell them that we will maintain the confidence, but the biggest thing is don't tell anybody. Well, in order to investigate a issue or make it part of a grievance process, we have to be able to discuss the issue with others. So all of those things should be outlined in the employee handbook. Okay. So one of the things that I definitely try to live by when I'm working with clients and whatnot is two things. Everything is good until it's not. So that's one of the mottos. And when I say that, meaning if you don't put it in the employee handbook, okay, employees will be happy with what's going on until there's an issue, meaning you don't have a outline vacation policy, or you don't outline the time requests of when they want to take a vacation, and they constantly come at the last minute. Hey, I need Friday off, and today is Thursday. And let's just say this one particular Friday, you can't allow them to take it off. It's going to be a problem for the employee, because it's always, well, you always let me take it off. I don't understand why it's a issue this time. With that being said, the employee handbook helps to eliminate those type issues. So everyone is on the same page. Everyone understands what the expectations are. Everyone is able to make the system work. And that's the most important thing, creating a system that works for the organization. And that's part of what the company does. And the other thing that I, try to work with clients on is, if no one is dead, everything is fixable. So with that being said, it's important to realize that the employee handbook is another tool. Okay, it's a tool that your organization wants to use in order to help make the system of the business work. It's not a end all be all. It is an assistant. The management team, the owners of the organization, if you're, a smaller company, are the ones that help make the process work. And that's some of the things that, the handbook starts. It starts the conversations. Sometimes it can end the conversations, because you can always refer back to it and say, so what did the handbook say? So most importantly, if you remember to, update it often. Okay, stay compliant with the current laws. And trust me, I realize there are a lot. COVID amplified a lot of different laws and added additional laws. And even with the start of 2023, those laws are going to change yet again, depending on where you are. And then make sure you highlight the benefits of the organization. We want to, ensure that the employees are getting what they need and that we're offering those benefits to the employees. And then of course, the do's, the don'ts. Don't try to stipulate every single thing that comes into play with the organization. You'll never be able to capture all the laws. And then, of course, the biggest of them all is not to infringe on any rights the employees have with the National Labor Relations Act. So they can talk about the workplace. We just want them to be professional and respectful when they do, but we do want them to voice their concerns, because as employers, that's how we get better, as long as it's done professionally and respectfully. All right, Safi, that's pretty much it for the employee handbook. Do we have any questions?
I'm on mute. Thanks, Chrystal. Thank you for sharing that. Great tips. I don't see any, well, actually, let me hold that thought. So for questions, if you're here on Clubhouse, please go ahead and put them in the chat here for the room. There is a question, but if you can go ahead and put that in the chat, I'll go ahead and read that out loud for Chrystal. So Chrystal, if you can come out of your share screen, that'd be great. And I want to just kind of touch on a few things while we wait on that question to populate. So then this is a topic for another day, but I do want to touch on it because I'm sure people are thinking, the status of an employee versus a contractor, right?
Oh, yeah.
Exactly, right? So we can talk all day on that, but I think before you even get into the compliance needed for having employees, such as the handbook and the policies, you want to make sure you're properly classifying that staff person appropriately. And as Chrystal mentioned, New York and California have one of the more stricter laws when it comes to that. And in the different industries that you may be in, I've seen a lot of contractor use where it may not be appropriate. And and so you want to definitely make sure that is first identified. Work with an HR specialist and or a labor attorney to get clarity on that. Feel free, Chrystal, if you have any tips on that, but I think that is definitely the priority. And then once you know the appropriate status, you can see that having an employee definitely has some more compliance that you want to have in place before you start hiring. So any thoughts you want to share?
Absolutely. So contractor or the 1099 individual, I don't even like to call them 1099 employees because they're not employees, but the contractors versus the employees, if you will. So my one question I always ask is, if you stop using that individual today as a contractor, will they file for unemployment? Because in California, that's how the majority of the employers get dinged and get caught on the hook and fined and stuff, is because that contractor, you were the only client that they had. And so, well, once you stop working with them, they had to file for unemployment. That's what we do, right? Well, not as a contractor. So there are a couple of things. So that's my first question. If they will file for unemployment, then 9 times out of 10, they're an employee, right off the cusp. Second thing that you want to consider is, whose materials are they using? Are they coming to your office? Do you require them to come to your office? Do they have more than one client? Are you the only client, or do they have multiple clients? The next thing you would want to look at is, again, whose materials are they using? Is it your computer, your paper, your pens, whatever it takes to get that job done? Is it all coming from you as the employer, or the client, if you will? Again, it depends. Do they have independent discretion? Like, can they make their own decisions, or is everything have to be run by you, the employer? So depending on a lot of those questions, we'll kind of make a determination as to who if they're an employee or not. And I'm gonna be honest with you, you'll never go wrong making them an employee. I'm just being honest. You will never, ever go wrong making them an employee, because that's the safer route. Just know when you make them contractors, your risk, becomes a lot higher. You open yourself up to a lot more fines and penalties, because ultimately, and this is Chrystal's personal opinion, Uncle Sam wants that tax money. And usually when employers do 1099s, it's because they're trying to save money, and usually it's easier to pay $10 than $10.50, because that's typically what an employer would pay. So keep that in mind. It's always, easier to err on the side of caution. So.
Agreed. Totally agree. Totally agree. And I am going to have a topic on this next year, but it was also covered in my masterclass that talked about it, expanding your practice, which will be available on demand soon. So there's more talk about this coming, but it's definitely a combination. It affects taxes, it affects your business as a whole from the legal side and the HR compliance side. So all three, are involved in this decision, and it's really an important decision to make. So the question that came about asks about cybersecurity compliance for employees, regarding do's and don'ts. Any suggestions you have regarding cybersecurity? Because that's a big thing now.
Definitely a big thing, and definitely want to have a cybersecurity policy in the handbook. Reason why that definitely goes in the handbook is because it affects the whole organization. And oftentimes, depending on how big the company is, it may need to go a step further and actually have its own individual annual training. Phishing is a big deal. The internet phishing is a big deal. I had an organization where it appeared that the email came saying, "Hey, change the employee's direct deposit," and the payroll person was like, "Oh, okay, yeah." I mean, had the same signatures, the email signatures and everything, and yeah, whole paycheck went to wherever it went and was unable to get that money back. I had another client who did a wire transfer, $45,000 wire transfer, that of course they didn't get that money back either. So you definitely want cybersecurity. And I'm going to go a step further and say, you even want to have written in the policy social media policy. And you have to be careful, and I'm going to say this, either get a HR professional that has attorneys to review it, or have attorneys to review it. Because again, when I was talking about the NRRA, social media actually is an avenue for employees to what they have concerted effort. And that's a legal term that basically says employees are allowed to talk about their working conditions, which may include, a manager that doesn't treat them well, or, rats in the warehouse or something like that. Even though social media, as employers, we're like, only put the good stuff, don't put the bad stuff. And that's, in our perfect world, but that's not our reality. So you need to have a social media policy on there. One of the things that has been used, social media is used as a bullying tool and technique. And as an employer, you actually have to help protect employees, even though it's coming through social media. It's not your Facebook account, it's not the company's Facebook account. But if someone is using social media to demean, talk about, bully another employee, we have to deal with that as well, because that affects how the employee is able to work. That could be considered harassment, hostile work environment. Like, I'm using all these terms, which leads up into other issues, but cybersecurity, social media policies, definitely in the handbook.
Wow. Whew. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a lot.
No, it's a lot to think about. And this is important, when you're expanding your practice or business. It's not just, okay, give me your W-4 and maybe your I-9, there's a lot more that goes into that. And that's why you want to plan accordingly to evaluate the need to expand and start planning a couple months before, so you have time to get all this in place, to have all these sign-offs and everything done from the start. Because like Chrystal mentioned, the employee contractor issue, just going back to that for a minute, often comes about because a disgruntled staff member who was deemed a contractor and then went to the department, Department of Labor, filed
Mhm.
unemployment, filed a complaint, et cetera, which then results in them coming in, reviewing timesheets and hourly wage and pay schedules and all those different things. And if none of that's in compliance, the penalties can be
Astronomical.
astronomical. Yes, great word. So
Well,
yes,
I've seen some companies shut down behind
yes,
it.
yes,
One claim can kill a company.
yes.
And God forbid, and I'm knocking on wood over here, a class action lawsuit. And it only takes one to start a class action lawsuit. People think, oh no, it takes like 3, 10, 12 people. No, it takes one individual to start a class action lawsuit, and then they
Mm,
can go back 3 years.
mm,
So at least here in California, every state has their own laws.
yeah. Wow.
So
Yep. So think ahead, when looking to expand, make sure you have these policies and handbooks in place. And then the annual update, like you said, I
yeah.
was actually on a tax training the other day about ethics, and it talked about how out of date these ethic, rules are because of the times that have changed. And
Mhm.
so things that may have applied 10 years ago in the tax world, everything's in the cloud now. So like work papers and client documents and stuff like that are different, and it's never been updated for that. So, so the annual update was a key point, and annual trainings, and for example, if you have HIPAA compliance as a requirement in your
Mhm.
practice, those are things that probably need to be addressed, possibly in the handbook or
Annually. Yep.
right, or with
Mhm.
a policy, or to ensure that everyone in your organization is meeting that criteria. And I do agree with Chrystal. Please don't refer to them as 1099 employees. No, so it's like oxymoron. It is an oxymoron, right? So
Absolutely.
they are 1099
Absolutely.
contractors or they're
Contractors,
employees.
employees. Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
either or, not both.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I think those are all the questions. Last call for any questions on this topic.
Wait, and I'm gonna say one other
Yes,
thing about 1099s while it's on my top of my head.
yes.
Do not put them on the same pay schedule as your employees and make them do an invoice. So I thought about that right now. Do not,
Thank
if
you.
you have employees, do not put them on the same pay schedule. Most people pay their contractors or their bills once a month, net 30 days. You treat them like if they're contractors, any other bill you may have within the company,
Yeah.
because they're a bill.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
I've definitely heard about the invoice feature, but I didn't think about the pay schedule concept.
Mhm.
Um, One other thing that I've heard with the employee contractor discussion is just having someone set up an LLC and then thinking that
Oh,
alone
yeah.
makes them a contractor.
I mean, it sounds good, and in theory, that's part of it, but what about insurance? What about general liability? What about professional liability, insurance? What about a business license? What about, like, all of those other things that business owners have to, have and operate? Um, I personally, like, if I'm using a 1099, yeah, I need all of those things. That's my checklist
Mm,
for them, because
mm.
again, I don't want to be sued. I don't want to be, called in to the state of California for no reason other than for them to say hello. And since they don't do those kind of phone calls,
Yeah,
I'm good.
exactly. Good point. Good point. Yeah, in New York here, with workers' comp, just through client experiences, if your contractor does not
Mhm.
have their own workers' comp, where they can provide you a certificate of insurance to show that, then you are required to cover them under your own workers' comp policy. So workers' comp may have different criteria for
Mm.
employee versus contractor than Department of Labor, than the
Mhm.
IRS. And they may not all correlate.
And then they tell each other, don't let California will get you, and then they'll call the IRS and say, "Hey, we got one." And the
Interesting.
IRS will come in and do their part. Yes, workers'
Interesting.
comp. If any business owner has ever done a workers' comp audit at the end of the year, one of the questions they always ask you is, "Do you have contractors that work for you?" And that's where that information goes. What Safi was talking about. You, in essence, will be or can be charged for having contractors if they don't have their own. So those
Yep.
questions are there for a reason.
Yep.
So
And answer
keep it
them
in mind.
correctly.
Please, and thank you.
Please. Yes.
Otherwise, it will be a problem
Right.
later. So,
Right. Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Yep. So a lot of pointers here, guys. I know this was helpful. Thank you again, Chrystal, for joining us and sharing your 20+ years of experience. I'm just going to close out sharing my information for anyone who came on late. And then, Chrystal, I want you to go ahead and share how people can connect with you. And
Okay.
we will wrap this up. So once again, we were here for Business Basics Friday. Topic today was Employee Handbook Do's and Don'ts. And guest speaker Chrystal Abbott here to share with us. I'm Safi Russell, founder and CEO of SDR Consulting, Inc. And I provide tax accounting and consulting services for mental health professionals in private practice and group practice, self-employed, et cetera. You can find me online at Safi Russell CPA. Also, my website, sdrconsultinginc.com. And lastly, you can call to schedule a complimentary introductory call at 516-255-6603. Lastly, if you have not gotten a copy of my free ebook on 12 overlooked tax write-off for mental health professionals, you can definitely find that at www.safirussellcpa.com. And feel free to browse my page if you need that exact link. So thanks again. And Chrystal, go ahead and share how people can reach out to you.
So Chrystal Abbott, Crystal Clear HR and Business Services. Web site is www.crystalclearhrs.com. Facebook is Crystal Clear HR LA, and Instagram is Crystal Clear HRS. I have Twitter too, and it's Crystal Clear, just Crystal Clear HR. So I appreciate the time. Thank you for the invite again, Safi. This has been fun. And to all business owners, 2023 is a new year, and I'm, expecting blessings and prosperous new one. Thank you, guys.
Thank you again, Chrystal. Thanks, everyone. Happy Friday. Make sure you get out there and practice some self-care this weekend. Don't work too hard. And it's important. And on another note, and happy holiday season to everyone. Talk to you soon.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.